With that said, our first presentation is by John Stempel, the city's chief inspector, and this is the formal presentation of the Neighborhood Quadrant Code Enforcement program that I'm sure all of you have heard a little bit about, but it is in the final stages now.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I also have been drinking water, so I'm going to try to focus long enough to get through this. I was kind of excited when I walked into the room and all these people were here. I figured they heard I was going to be speaking tonight, but maybe that wasn't the case. Before I begin, I just would like to start with a short story as to what has motivated myself and many others to do some things to make change happen in the city of Saginaw. Change is happening. We've heard some of that tonight. You drive down Washington Avenue, it's there. Go to downtown, it's there. Go to a neighborhood group meeting, it's there. Check out Old Town, there too. We have new educational opportunities in the city with CMU and Delta College, and I could go on and on. This change is happening because people are making change happen. It just doesn't happen on its own. People make things happen, and it's everywhere. Part of my presentation is a little bit of bragging. I don't get to do that very often publicly, but I'm going to take the opportunity to do that. I recently attended a banquet at Saginaw Valley State University with my daughter. I was the tag-along this time instead of her being the tag-along. And I thought it was going to be a night where I could turn work off. Didn't really have a care in the world other than seeing what my daughter was doing. And when I walked into the room, they handed me a brochure, and I open it up and look at it, and there's the mayor's picture right in the middle of the brochure. Then I learned that Mamie Thorns was running this program, Dr. Thorne's wife, and as I walked a little further, I started meeting people that I knew, and it turned to be work again, but that was okay. The speakers that were there, it was very impressive. The kids in this institute that is run, they had an opportunity to talk with the mayor and get his insight and some things that are happening in the city of Saginaw, what it means to be a leader. And one of these kids was so motivated by the mayor that he is going to pursue politics for his career. What was nice about that is the city of Saginaw was very much front and center at this room with 300 people in it, and I was certainly very proud to be there under those circumstances, so I just thought I'd share that with you. It seems everywhere I go, change is happening in the city of Saginaw, and what I'm here to talk to you tonight is what we're calling Quadrant Service Delivery System. That's the fanciest name I could come up with, or QSDS. This program that I'm going to talk to you about has been a result of talking with the city manager, the police chief, the fire chief, city council members, and most important, our customers or the residents. Several meetings have been held. I had a NAG meeting and I asked for a few volunteers to come help me build this program to what the residents wanted to see. And I didn't have room in my office for them all. And we had some very productive conversation and some good things came from that. Just to start the presentation, I thought I would just very briefly go through some of the things that the inspections division does, what we're responsible for as far as code enforcement goes. The first is specification writing. We write specifications detailing work for our homeowner occupied rehabilitation program where we fix up homes. We have construction code inspections. We perform building inspections, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical inspections, not only for the city of Saginaw, but Saginaw Township, Spalding Township, and the city of Zilwaukee. We have code enforcement functions, which include the rental licenses or housing code, dangerous dogs, licensing enforcement, the vacant property registration ordinance, and I could go on and on with those items. Environmental improvement, we have a team of 4 employees that patrol the city, both during for trash violations at the curb and trash and debris in yards. We also correct those violations if they're not done so voluntarily under our own means with the garbage truck and equipment. Parking enforcement. Recently, the City Council made some amendments to the parking ordinance, which increased our staffing from 1 full-time person to 1 full-time and 2 part-time. That one change in the ordinance in a very short time increased our parking ticket revenues from $5,000 per month to $21,000 per month. Those 2 people will pay for themselves in 1 month of service. Dangerous building code enforcement. This is a big one lately, especially with all of the grant dollars we've received. We have 1 employee who manages both the private demolitions, where we have to pursue orders for those demos, and also administers the grants. $11 million we're working on right now. We still have $9 million to go by next March. And I'm sure there are other things I'm forgetting. Currently, this is what the inspections division looks like with all those divisions that I talked about. You can see there's very definite lines as far as who does what, when, and where, if we all paid attention to our job descriptions. As our staff has shrunk over the years, so has our recognition of our job descriptions. We all see that there's a need for us to make change happen, and everybody sort of just chips in where they can, and we do what we need to do to get things done. I was playing with Mr. Klopsik's fancy computer. I learned how to make this fancy wheel chart up here that sort of brings in all of the pieces that come into play when we're talking about code compliance. Includes dangerous buildings, the rehab, weed abatement, environmental improvement, the Saginaw Fire Department. They play a role in code enforcement, particularly with their smoke detector program. It is a violation of the Saginaw Housing Code not to have smoke detectors in your home. They are helping us correct those issues. Neighborhood associations. I think I got a few folks from the neighborhood association here. Those are our. Yes, sir. Sorry, I sort of encouraged that, sir. I'll refrain from that. Community policing, parking enforcement, and we have also experimented with some of the reserve officers. So going back to scenic and what it is and what it means and how we got to where we are today, it's made up of all of the functions shown in the slide that I just showed you previously. All those little blue dots are what makes up scenic. As I was putting this presentation together, I went back to a presentation that I did back in June of 2009, and I just want to read what the purpose of scenic was. We called it a task force back then. And the purpose was to make marked improvements in the appearance of and the quality of neighborhoods in the city of Saginaw via a cooperative interdepartmental effort to proactively address and enforce the laws of the city which were enacted to make the city of Saginaw a desirable place to live and to protect the investments people have made in property in Saginaw. The last slide of that presentation sort of summed all that up by saying, we are here to improve the scenic qualities of the city of Saginaw through aggressive code enforcement and citizen or property owner accountability. Many of these functions we find overlap. They are not rocket science. It's very simple. A lot of it is common sense. When we talk to all the folks involved in these enforcement actions, we simply say, would you want to live next door to that? Use that as your standard. It creates efficiencies. In other words, we don't have to have 4 people to deal with 4 different code violations because we all know how to do all those functions. We found it generates revenue by issuing tickets. The neighborhood group people, there were 5 of them that for about 2 months showed up in my office very regularly on a Monday afternoon and hung around for 3 or 4 hours, and they did nothing but write tickets for unregistered rentals. They did such a good job I couldn't keep up with them. I couldn't post the tickets fast enough on the properties. After a review of the revenue generated by their efforts over a very short period of time, we generated in excess of $6,000 just from those volunteer efforts. It worked. The other thing we tried to do is create responsiveness for our residents. The first things that we did when we started the scenic program is we started going to neighborhood group meetings. They were difficult in the beginning because they've all heard it before. Somebody from the city shows up, makes all these promises, and then they never come back. We didn't stop coming back. We kept coming there and listening and getting direction from our residents so that we could provide the service that they wanted to the best of our efforts. The concept that we're going to move forward with here very shortly has been tested. Rob Davis and Darren Jerome over the last few years, they've proven that this works. Basically, what they did, they'd show up at a neighborhood group meeting, and every time they did, they walked out with a list. I'm sure much of you guys have the same experience when you meet with residents. They all have these little things that they would like the city to address as far as enforcing ordinances. I know that you guys get those same messages because eventually they come my way. We talked about communication and how we do it. We have a system, 399-1311, takes complaints. We talked about how we could improve upon that. We talked about, I just brought a little example here. This is from the Adams Boulevard neighborhood. They have issue forms. Makes it very nice for us to do our jobs when I got 4 people standing around me, all of them saying these things, and I'm trying to jot them down. By the time I get back to the office, I can't read my writing, and I don't know which direction to go. I might have been told the junk car on Mason and an unregistered rental on Woodbridge, but I switch them around and I'm lost. So these work very well for us to keep everything straight. The second part of that was the action. First is the list, the second part is the action. When we make the action, take the action necessary to cause these violations to conform with the law, we end up with the last thing, and that's the trust. The trust of the people that we work for. And at least based on what I have seen, and these folks, they continue to come to neighborhood meetings, they continue to come to the NAG group meetings, and I like to believe that if they didn't trust us, they wouldn't keep coming and they wouldn't keep participating. Some changes we have seen since we've tested this. We've seen a reduction in inspections division personnel. We've seen a reduction in community policing. We've seen a reduction in fire department personnel. However, we have also seen an increase in neighborhood group involvement. The NAG meeting, I think, started with about a dozen people. And every time for the past 6 months, I've been making copies of the agenda. I add 5 every time I make those copies, and I always run out. The room is full. We've also seen an increase in caseload and the responsibilities of the inspectors. What stayed the same? The goal of the scenic program is the same, as I read to you before. Citizens' desire for issues to be resolved is the same. Neighborhood groups, their support and encouragement is why we come to work every day. That's what we do. That's their support is outstanding, and it makes our day when we can make change happen. The third thing is the commitment of the employees to cause change to occur in a positive way. I couldn't ask for a better group of people in my office that many times sacrifice their own wants and needs to go to a neighborhood group meeting, to do things after hours, to make things happen on behalf of the city of Saginaw. The administration, the police chief, the fire chief, our new city manager, I couldn't ask for better support from those folks. We couldn't do what we do without that support. Something about having a big police officer standing behind me that makes me feel a whole lot bigger than I am. More with less. What did we learn? We learned it doesn't work. I joke with our inspectors that my job is to get as much work out of them as physically possible and have them be happy about it. It's hard sometimes, but they usually come around. What does work? Interdepartmental cooperation. When we help each other make things happen, they happen. That goes all the way across the board as far as the police department, the fire, Phil Carwatt. If I call Phil up and I need to make something happen for one of our groups, whether it's a tree that's fallen down, you can bet the next day he's out there taking care of that for us. And it just helps build the whole teamwork and the credibility of what we try to do. The last thing, removal of all barriers to progress. We sort of have a rule. You look for the way to get there, not the reason why you can't. I struggle sometimes with government, even though I've worked here for 19 years, and a lot of times government employees look for the way not to do something instead of how to do something, and that's not how we operate, certainly. Cooperation with neighborhood groups is huge. They are our eyes and ears. They live there. They know where things are. Know where things shouldn't be, and having them out there reporting information to us is key. We can't be everywhere at once, but the neighborhood groups and the people that live in the neighborhoods, they're there every day. They live there, and they're good at it. So how do we accomplish what we're trying to accomplish beyond our scenic experiment with Rob Davis and Darren Jerome? Obviously, use the neighborhood team approach, assigning one employee along with a community police officer as the team leaders for each quadrant. Team leader would be responsible for the coordination of all code enforcement activities within that quadrant. And then the biggest part is assigning the resources for them to do things and make things happen. If they don't have the tools, they can't make things happen. The idea, multiply the team of Rob Davis and Darren Jerome by 4 and do it all over the city. Team leader responsibilities and the resources available. There would be teams in each quadrant making up all of these items and having a person available and assigned to address all of these items specifically in a certain geographic area of the city. In other words, I can focus instead of being a code enforcement inspector who is on Norman Street in the morning, is down in Collingwood in the afternoon. and is over on Wheeler Street later in the afternoon, and he's so confused about how to get from point A to point B, he's in one area. He has one neighborhood group to talk to. He starts building relationships, and we think that that will function much better. Technology. This is where, if I say something wrong, Jeff, correct me. Jeff Klopsick, I don't know how he does everything that he does, but adding some technology to our department, the things that he's done with our enterprise software to make our jobs easier, more efficient. Instead of having to click 17 times to get a job done, we click once. The other piece that he just handed to me a couple days ago is this thing. I don't know how to use it, so don't ask any technical questions about this thing. But this will have our enterprise software in it. Our inspectors will be able to use this. They'll be able to log their entries into the computer while they're in the car. They don't have to spend time driving back to City Hall so they can sit in front of a computer. Their time spent in the field is much more valuable than spending time trying to get cooperation out of a computer. The other thing that we're looking at and think will be more efficient is creating a means for our neighborhood group presidents to communicate directly with an inspector without actually having to make a phone call. For things that are happening right now, they can call a number in my office. The person that answers the phone will be able to send a communication directly to that inspector, and their phone will go ding-a-ling, and it'll say, somebody's parking on the front lawn over here right now. They'll have the information immediately, which when we get the information, when the call is made is usually when the problem is occurring. We don't spend time chasing that person that's parking on the front lawn for days because they only parked there when they made the call. We go look at it 3 times, the car's not there, but guess what? The next day after we went there 3 times, the car's back again. And it gives the appearance that we're not doing our job because they don't know we went 3 times, but the car is still there. We'll have the information immediately so that they'll be in the quadrant, they'll be in the car, they can drive by right now and they'll have the information. Team leader accountability. It's very difficult to keep track of what everyone's doing when everyone is working everywhere in the city all at the same time. It's difficult to gauge success. It's difficult to gauge performance when, as I described before, they're bouncing all over the city. We make resources available for the leaders so that, in other words, removing the excuses for not making things happen. The tools will be there, the resources will be there. They're already there now, it's just we need to use them more efficiently. We'll have new methods for reporting problems, hopefully increase our response time to issues. And then the last thing that I presented to our neighborhood group folks is focusing on the issues that matter the most. We do have limited resources, and we have to pick and choose which one is the most important today and which one can wait a little while. Do we deal with the house that has a torn screen and a missing window lock, or do we deal with the house that's got 3 dogs tied to the tree out front, 4 junk cars in the backyard, 6 people sleeping in the basement, is an unregistered rental, and there are drug and gang problems at the house? It doesn't take too much to figure out which way we should go with that. That was their homework assignment last week. This is sort of what the map looks like. I tried to squeeze it in on one screen. You can see the quadrants identified with the green lines, which basically follow the same lines as the fire districts. There's a fire station in each of those districts, and that's how they respond based on those areas. The assignments have been made as far as inspectors go. Scott Crowfoot, who is our dangerous building inspector, will be in Quadrant 1, which is the northeast. He'll be working with Leon Burns, community police officer. We have 2 environmental crew people. We also utilize TRICAP. We get free labor from TRICAP, and we try to use that as much as we can. We'll have 1 parking enforcement person. There are 3 to 4 fire department personnel in the fire station. And we have 4 neighborhood groups within Quadrant 1. The Northeast, Arthur Eddy, Houghton Jones, and the Cathedral District. You add all those people up, you have 1, 2, 5, 6, 10, 14 plus people working in Quadrant 1. Quadrant 2 will be assigned to James Martin. He's a housing inspector. He'll be working with Nathan Volker, community police officer, and again, he'll have the same resources available to him. This is a scary one. I've decided it's of more benefit to have me out in the field at this point in time. 1, to evaluate how the system works, get firsthand knowledge of what's working, what's not working. I'll be working with John Byerline in Quadrant 3, and we'll have, again, the same resources available to us. That will include the Saginaw High neighborhood, the Southeast neighborhood, and the Redeemer neighborhood. Quadrant 4, Scott Nazinski. Patrick Bush was assigned this morning as the community police officer. We'll have the same resources. The neighborhood groups included are the Northmore, Northwest, Covenant, and Buttman Fish neighborhoods. Expected results. We talked about employee accountability, customer satisfaction. I should add that in the other. Customer satisfaction should have been number 1, but employee satisfaction. That's also important. I said making our employees happy about the job that we're doing is important. Another crushing blow in the fight against crime and blight. I like to think that we're winning the battle. Things have changed, as I said at the beginning of the meeting. Blight is being removed, and the only way we're going to keep that going is if we keep pushing. Declining is easy because you can sit and do nothing, but going the other way takes work because you're pushing uphill. And hopefully resulting in the last item there, a better Saginaw, Michigan. Any questions?
Councilman Floyd Clark, go ahead.
I'm not sure why you need to ask that permission, but I like the idea. I think it's a great one, so go for it.
I think I was just here.
Information,
It's
I
good for our
understand.
bosses to know what we're doing, and the other thing that I look at too is last thing I might check, council members have to be a resident to live or to be a council member.
Absolutely.
And these services are certainly available to you too, so
Good job, is what I'm saying.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Councilwoman Moore.
I'd like to thank Temple because I call him at any time of the night and he's forever saying, it's no problem. And it's like, I just want to thank you publicly for the stuff that when people ask me and I don't know who to call and you say call you, so I call you. So I just want to thank you personally.
You're welcome.
In front of the public to let them know that you are doing an excellent job.
Well, I have an excellent group of people to work with, and I certainly couldn't do anything that I do without the folks we have in our office, so I appreciate that.
Councilman Fitzpatrick, out here.
Say, you talk about creative responses to our big problem, which is our budget. And all the department heads here are just incredible. And I especially want to say that, Mr. Stemple, that, you're handling stuff that is scary, often very scary. People don't realize how you guys are in harm's way, I think, a lot of the time. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your courage. And thank the fire department and the police department for backing you up. So,
Thank you, sir.
yeah.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Stemple, thanks for the information. Great concept. It really maximizes staff and the response to the public. Just a question, and maybe I missed it. What type of cost savings or increases will this have on our budget?
It's all the same people. It's all the same stuff. It's all the same job. It's just focusing an individual's efforts in one area so that they don't go crazy. That's really all it is. I'm not sure on the cost of these devices. However, Jeff is still working on getting that to me, and that would be something, once we roll it out completely, if we do go with this type of situation, that would come before council. But there are no other small print, hidden costs. It's just us doing things a little bit differently to try to be more responsive to our customers.
So your department, it seems like your staff are assuming these roles. Are there any categories in your department that will spin off from this or be reduced as a result of this realignment in terms of FTEs? Is that something that's going to come back before us to change or modify? Maybe that's a manager question.
Certainly not part of our plan as it ever is.
Okay.
I continually try to bribe Yolanda with coffee and things like that when she's preparing my budget, but the idea is to include, because we can be more efficient, and one of the things that we hope comes from this is we've sort of had this approach that we tell people once, we tell people twice, we tell them 3 times, and try to coddle them into doing the right thing and following the law. But with the addition of certain technology, the issuance of tickets previous to the things that Jeff Klopsick has done with the enterprise software, ticket issuance it was a very cumbersome process. And we couldn't issue those violations easily. It sort of got in the way of enforcing the code because you'd have to spend an hour trying to figure out how to put those charges in the computer, so when the person showed up to pay the ticket, the people in the treasurer's office knew how to take the money. All of that can be done from one device. You click on it, it creates the charge, and I don't know what it does, but it all happens automatically. Therefore, hopefully increasing the amount of revenue that is generated from our office. Revenue generation historically has been pretty even, expenses versus revenues from our office with the permit revenue and other things that we generate. So we're just trying to keep status quo. We certainly would love more employees, but we understand too that we're not in a position to add additional people. We can't. We get that. We all try to do the best job we can every day, and we all want to make it to the end. And we're going to work as hard as we can to do that without increasing our expenses, and continue to generate the revenue and sort of keep them both matching and move forward from there.
Okay, thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, when you first started out with the first slide, you or some of the first, we don't have the slides.
Okay.
How many parking enforcement people do we have?
We have two
full-time?
full, it's actually a little more than 2. It's 8 hours more than 2 full-time. They're 28-hour-a-week employees, the 2 that we added. And then we have 1
When I looked at the
full-time.
quadrants, I counted 4. 1 for each quadrant, and it didn't match the
that's
numbers
a little
earlier.
deceiving. There would be a east side and a west side parking enforcement officer.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
that matches up then, okay. Councilman Clark?
John, thanks for putting together a great program. When do we start?
We already have.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Councilman Ball?
Are you guys working full-time at this?
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, 8 hours a day? You got 2 policemen? I mean, 2 firefighters?
I wish we were only working 8 hours a day, sir.
No, seriously, I mean, do 2 firefighters come with you?
Firefighters?
Yeah, I thought I saw 2 firefighters in each quadrant.
The idea of having the quadrants is based on the physical location of fire stations. The fire chief has now asked his response staff, suppression staff, I don't know if I'm using the right words, Chris, to attend neighborhood group meetings. They may not be out writing tickets, but they're still people. They still see things. There are still things that they can do. They can talk with the neighborhood groups, gather information, and participate in our code enforcement program. They, like I said, they do the smoke detector program. They've just started the open burning issues. That's all part of code enforcement that they're starting to get into. There's other things that we can do. We're talking about the neighborhood group meetings. There's 13, 14, 15, there's a bunch of neighborhood group meetings all over the city. There's a meeting that, and Councilwoman Moore said it best, is you guys got a lot of meetings to go to. There's a meeting for every night of the week. If I want to stay married, I got to figure out a better way to manage this.
You might need to go to, you may need to keep going to meetings. No, hold on a minute.
Yes,
Hold
sir.
on. All I'm asking is the police, the firefighters that normally at the firefighter hall or wherever they be at, now they be with you guys 8 hours a day? That's
No,
what I'm asking.
absolutely
Okay,
not.
that's what I'm asking.
No.
That's what I'm asking. So how often do you guys, like you do this job like 3 or 4 hours a day? You go out and check the neighborhoods out, or you do
No,
it 4 hours a day? Or?
This is a full-time job.
Okay.
When they're not on fire calls.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay.
Right.
As needed, really.
Okay.
Yeah, there are other fire department issues that we deal with. We see auto repair facilities in residential neighborhoods where they're spraying paint in garages. The fire marshal, dangerous buildings is a big part of what we do with the fire marshal. It takes 2 of us to declare a building an emergency. We do those things. We tear them down immediately when we discover they're an immediate hazard to the public and the people in the neighborhood. They go away, and that's because we work together. When we do demolitions in the middle of the night, the fire department assists us. It's hard to tear down a house in the middle of the night. It's dark. They bring out their rigs, they light up the scene for us so that we can see when we do our job.
Okay.
It's just a big team effort.
Thank you. Appreciate it.